In life, we all hit the occasional bump in the road, and somehow we find a way to keep on going, and that is what this podcast is all about. Connecting with people who have been to hell and back, and hearing their story about how they got themselves to a better place. And I host this podcast from inside an RV that so far has traveled across Ontario, Quebec, and the Maritimes, inviting people in to share their mental health journey. The BTR for Mental Health was made possible, by the way, by hundreds of generous social media followers and listeners who know that talking is how we keep moving forward and how we break down the stigmas. It's Milkman John Milky, and welcome to Bumps in the Road, our first conversation for Season 3. And my guest today is Frank Papineau. Like most Canadians, I came to know Frank from his fishing TV show. We'll get into that in just a bit. Frank, by the way, has just launched his own podcast called Frank Papineau Outside the Box. But it's everything that has happened between then and now that we want to get into. Hello, Frank Papineau.
Hey, Johnny, my best bud. How you doing, man?
So good, and I know you've been working hard on getting this podcast set up. I've got a simple little moving blanket that I picked up at Princess Auto hanging behind me here in the RV. You got a logo carved out of metal. You're in a log cabin with a wood door. I'm salivating over your setup. You look good, dude.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thank you very much. Yeah, this was a lot of people's help behind, as with a lot of great things that have happened in my life. A lot of other people have helped me, and it really was set up to kind of depict who I am. I love the outdoors, and I've spent a big part of my life after growing up on a farm outside. So, yeah, this is it. Thanks for the compliment. I appreciate it.
No, it looks really, really good. And it's great to connect with you. So let's start from the beginning, where I first came to know you, and I think that's probably where most people in Canada came to know you, and that is the fishing show that you had. And I want to say it was on Discovery, or was that pre-Discovery Channel? That was...
Well, it started at Rogers Community Television here in Ottawa, of all places. Right. A guy by the name of Ray Scaff gave me a chance to get into television, and the rest from that was the history of it. But yeah, we played on CTV across Canada, and then the Outdoor Channel in the United States, and B-Sky B in UK and Ireland. So it started on community TV, then it went across the country on CTV, the regular network, which was like unheard of. We were so lucky for that gig as well. And then the Americans got to see it, and even the Europeans got to see it. So yeah, we're pretty cool.
I didn't realize that you had gone that international. It's also very interesting, by the way, that I would know you from a fishing show, because I don't fish.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people watch it didn't fish, but they like the outdoors. And a lot of people that they told me at the time, they began loving fishing. So
yeah, I found you quite compelling too. You had a fun way to introduce non-interested in fishing people like me into the world of fishing. Maybe it was the boats, I don't know, but certainly the outdoors. Once the fishing show wrapped up, that's kind of where I lost track of you. We reconnected in later years. So catch us up. After the fishing show, where was Frank Papineau? What were you doing?
Well, a couple of crazy things happened. Got divorced. Got sick. I built, there's a lot of things that happened in between it. I built a restaurant, and yeah, I got involved in a restaurant that I built outside of Ottawa, and I was in the process of building a log home, and I got bit by a tick in 2010. So, 2010 until today, basically that whole thing changed my life. So I went from being on TV, being a TV guy, to a restaurateur and working in the internet world and doing that kind of stuff, still television-wise. But then I got bit by that tick and my life changed. So that's really where my mental anguish really took its shape.
So that's what we're going to zero in on, obviously. Okay, so a tick bite, and I mean, we've all heard the stories. We hear stories in the news every single day that, it's tick season. And I think most of us, especially if we live in the city, we're concerned about our dog getting bit by a tick. You hear about it on farms, certainly. What happens to a human when they get bit by a tick?
Well, you get pretty sick, John. It's crazy. I was always a guy doing something in my entire life, even from growing up as a kid. I just made things happen. That's how my friends kind of say it. So, I was in the middle of building. I had a restaurant that I had just built, and I was building a log house, and I got bit by the tick, and I didn't get sick right away. It took a couple of months before I started to not feel right, and it progressively got worse. And I lost the restaurant, and I wasn't able to do the other jobs that I had. And I wouldn't say that I got depressed. It's just I wasn't physically able to do it anymore. And I had hormonal testosterone problems. I had all kinds of really weird health problems that I didn't know at the very beginning what it was, but it was that tick bite that changed that. So the mental anguish became that I couldn't do the things I used to do. I'll tell you a really crazy thing. I was taking a shower after I got bit by that tick, maybe a year later, and I just started crying in the bathroom. Like I looked down, I started to lose muscle mass. I was starting to feel like, what's going on? Like there's something really bad going on with me. And it really took its toll because I am a man's man. I'm an outdoors guy. I'm that kind of person. And it just all of a sudden started to go away from me and I was in my 40s too. I wasn't, it's not that I was old. I was in my 40s. So it started to play some tricks on me. And then my battle for getting taken care of health-wise began. And I can tell you that that battle was there was two ultimate tests mentally for me. And the battle of fighting for myself really took shape. And yeah, I had 30, 40 hospital visits, ambulance visits. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. People were worried about me that loved me, but they didn't know how to help me because they didn't understand what this tick bite was all about. So
you had the physical thing from the tick bite, which I'm assuming Lyme disease, right? Which was knocking the crap out of you. And the frustration of being limited in what you can do and not feeling like your regular self, that's what took its toll on you mentally. It's interesting to hear you describe that because I was very similar. I was this positive kid who only ever wanted to be in radio. I called every shot. I was going to graduate from high school. I was going to go to Loyalist College and take the radio program, and I did that. And then I was going to go to work for Shea, which, if you're in the Ottawa area, Shea 106. Well, I went to work for the company as a sales rep, but for their stations in Smiths Falls. But still, I was calling every single shot along the way, and I was positive. And 15, 16 years, at the same radio station I was at, suddenly I realized I'm not this positive person anymore. And I felt, like you said, limited in my capabilities, and nothing was making sense, and more of that frustration. And like you, standing in the shower, looking at my body going, you know what, I'm putting on weight. This isn't right. Things aren't adding up here. And the people around me, just like you said about your friends, they're like, you're not the same guy. What's going on? And you don't really know in the moment what's going on, do you?
No, because people didn't believe me. Right? So people, you got bit by a tick, and people didn't understand that, and I didn't understand it good enough to explain. I knew what ticks were. I grew up in the country. I've been a farm boy all my life, growing up, my youth, and I've been an outdoorsman my entire life. I know what ticks are. Like anybody to question if I know what a tick is, and is absolutely just not very smart to think that I wouldn't know. We were taking wood ticks off of dogs in the 70s, so I think I knew what a tick was. But the process of what it was doing to my body and eliminating my ability to be who I was, I couldn't put it together on how it was affecting me. I just know it was really affecting me. And I got to be honest, and when I mean by be honest, I mean by telling you what was inside that I didn't tell other people, is that I was really trying hard not to be sick. I was putting on this thing where, well, I'm fighting, but it was destroying me inside. It was destroying my relationships.
How do you pretend not to be sick, Frank? Because, Lyme disease, you're sick if you've got Lyme disease.
Yeah. Well, when doctors don't believe you and people are questioning it, I have this belief in life that I've had all the time, for my whole life. I am responsible for picking me up. And I have a very, very solid foundation of positiveness growing up. I've been successful in life. I was and I've pulled myself out of some pretty crazy places. Like my mom, it's just so you can understand the early part. My mom had me when she was pregnant at 16, had me at 17,
Uh-huh.
and my mother is instrumental in my life still to this day. And I left home at 15. So I've been an adult for a very long time, and you don't get to where I got without being positive. So the thing that ultimately saved me is the test of my belief, and we'll talk about that if you like. But I had to show people that I was still the guy I was, but they saw a difference. So even though I was trying to put on this show of, no, I'm okay, I'll keep doing it, it was destroying me from the inside. And eventually it started to make me question everything about who I was. And so, yeah, that's really, it's not fair to say fake it, but, I'm a pretty proud guy. So I didn't want to be down. I wanted to try to keep myself up, and it was getting to be very difficult. That's really ultimately what happened.
Anybody with experience in mental health, whether you've read about it, whether you've experienced it firsthand, you've seen a partner go through it, a friend go through it, they talk about this mask. And it's this ability, for people who have severe depression, anxiety, to somehow, I don't even know where it comes from, but this other personality sort of takes over and moves the real you that's going through all of this behind, and you somehow find a way to function. And that's the mask that they talk about. I did it every single day. I was able to go on the radio, make people laugh, smile, be positive, as I mean, nobody wants to turn on the radio and hear somebody, talking about depression. But I always called it this little bubble. The studio is this bubble where the outside world couldn't get to me. It was a mask, because the minute I would leave there, and I mean, the minutes leading up to it, Frank, I would be driving to work and get to the parking lot and sit in my car and cry for 15, 20 minutes and shake. Like I didn't want to go into the studio. And I mean, this is the only thing I ever wanted to do in my life. None of it made sense. Once I was able to slip on the mask, nobody knew.
Yeah. I think that
is that
mask,
what you're describing?
well, I was really afraid to lose the things I loved.
Yeah,
That's what it was.
sure.
So, whether that be your position in life, your position with people, um, where your values were, like you're trying to hold all that together. And, and I can understand now how some people can't, the heart cries when it can't take no more and it sheds tears. Right. So, there were times that I just couldn't take it anymore, but I'll tell you though, there was always a savior. And I think that's why I'm here today, to be able to talk to you about that. There was always a piece of me in there that believed I could pick myself up. I didn't, I had to get better first. That was probably the hardest part, was getting somebody to believe me so that I could get better. It's the irony of this. The tick bit me on my bicep right here. I know it was a tick. Pretty hard to not be able to go like this, right? So,
Did you ever see the tick?
oh, absolutely.
Or you knew it was a tick bite because you had seen the tick?
Yeah, it's really simple. Without getting into a whole conversation on, yeah, I know it was in my body.
Okay.
Like,
Right.
it doesn't matter. The irony of that statement is, I don't need anybody else to tell me it was there. The irony of that statement is that
No, I think
no. But I'm just saying, there was other people who've seen it too. There was other people who've seen it, but like, I know it was there, right? So that's the part that is simple for me to know what was happening. And I knew about Lyme disease because we had family pets that had Lyme disease, and we had animals on our farm that had got it. But the point is that, there's the rest of people didn't see it. The rest of people didn't know. And as I got sick, it's pretty hard to explain that, This little tiny poppy seed thing
they're nasty.
could create such a, yeah, they are. But there was great people that helped me, and I don't want to dwell on the negative part of what I went through, because, that's a very personal thing that we only know ourselves, right? We can convey how we felt, but nobody can feel how we felt. So the thing that saved me is I just kept believing. I just kept believing I would find the answers to how to solve it, how to get better from it. And it's just, I don't know if that was the saving grace, but something saved me. And I just believe that it was the foundation from my youth and from successes I had. You know, that fishing show was a huge success.
Yeah.
You know, it started from nothing other than an idea. Like most people's successes start from an idea. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful. And I can tell you, John, that I had a lengthy lawsuit against that Lyme disease thing that I wasn't fortunate enough to be successful in.
Mm.
If 15 years worth, but I can tell you this, if I had to do that again, I would. If I had to do that exact fight again, I absolutely would, because at the end of the day, I'm not angry. I'm not angry that I wasn't successful, because I know the story that I presented was the true story. So, and I learned that in life, and that's the strength that's probably allowed me to become the better person I am now, is not getting mad at people who don't believe you. People are entitled to not believe. That's how it goes.
I am fascinated by your positivity, you know, because I certainly understand the frustration. I understand fear that had to factor into that. You must have had some moments, though, where, you know, you just didn't have that good day. This was overwhelming you, and, you know, darkness reared its ugly head.
Um, once I was able to start getting better, um, things got better, but there was a lot of dark days, and I did need a savior. I did do something that I needed to do to save me, but I lost everything, hey John, with that tick bite and progression over the years, getting sick. I lost house, business. I lost a partner that I was with for 10 years that was very important to me, and you know, I wasn't the man I was for that section of time. And you're right, there were the dark moments, because I'm an outgoing guy. So I did tell some people about the darkness, but you know, I learned something. When you're telling somebody about your darkness, they have darkness too.
Yeah.
So when you're sharing your darkness, you know, you may be stirring up problems within themselves that they're dealing with. And you know, sometimes it's not fair. It's lovely that people listen, but you know, you just don't want to do that to people. And it's just a lesson I've learned, right? You know, it's tough for people.
But isn't that I don't want to say problem, but isn't that one of the challenges when it comes to mental health, is that we don't want to burden people with it. So we don't talk about it, right? We bottle it up inside, and it festers and it consumes. And that's how people end up with severe depression. This is how people end up with suicidal thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah, I never had any of those. I'm fortunate. I never had any of those. I was very fortunate. I know some people who aren't here anymore from not being able to deal with things. So, and I really sympathize with that pain that they must have suffered. But John, I've always had, listen, foundations are important. Big buildings, relationships, yourself, you have to have foundational value for who you are in order. And I can say that now because I know that my foundational value is what saved me. I didn't always know at the time because, you know, like everything, you're there going, well, this isn't working. And I always thought this would work. Like, why am I not feeling better? But it's a process of saving yourself, because I believe that I saved myself. There was a lot of good things that happened to me along the way and a lot of bad things, but it was my belief in me that saved me from the mental anguish, the physical anguish, the loss. And the loss was, listen, the loss of business, relationships, friends was devastating. Yes, that's the time where, you know, I hung my head going, holy crap, you know, like, what can I do to solve all this? And I didn't know anything else other than not stop trying to solve it. So
See,
they were bad.
You sit right there. I admire that, because you inherently obviously have that switch. What can I do to save myself? I lack that. I have that now, I think, but it's taken me a tremendous amount of therapy and reading and coaching and convincing myself that is within me, and go find it and activate it. It's inherent in you.
When I left home at 15, I went to Victoria, BC to live with a friend. While he was in Spectrum High School, I was driving a bicycle at 4 o'clock in the morning to Peter Landalt's Catering, making food. So I learned really early growing up on a farm that work ethic and trying to be as honest as you can and trying to have values. I left home early, but they were instilled pretty quickly. My grandmother and my mom basically were the instrumental in the people in my life that gave me my strength. My grandmother's a Russian Ukraine, and my mom is French Canadian, Russian Ukraine, and I don't know who my dad is. So biologically, so I have this really weird mix.
We have that in common too, by the way.
Well, and the thing is I love all the scars. Like, I don't have any tattoos, but both of my arms are bare to you, or maybe to not you, but other people, but they're full of scars that I cherish those scars because they've taught me so much about what it takes to be successful not successful monetarily, to be successful inside of who you are. And, I'm not special. I don't believe in that. I'm gifted in some areas. I'm lucky in a pile of areas. And I just have never given up on myself, John. That's really at the end of the day what I tell my friends. They go, "How did you do this?" Like, "Oh, I just didn't give up. I didn't give up." But there was a savior moment. There was a real instrumental savior moment. If you're interested in hearing that savior moment,
of course we all want to hear that.
So once I started getting better, American doctors helped me, and then Canadian doctors helped me get better. And I started to get to the point where I could do some things again. But then I was getting older, and I was, "Oh man, this is not great." And I've lost the business. I've lost the house. My relationship destroyed me. And I questioned myself if I was still the man that I was. So in 2018, I said, I'm going to drive to the Arctic Ocean on a motorcycle.
And this is where you and I reconnected. You were just starting that, and you wanted to document it, and you somehow found your way to me and said, "I'm going to do this thing."
Yeah. And it's 2025, and that was 2018. So that tells you how long it took me to document it.
Okay, but you did ultimately do it. So let's talk about that, because this was wild. You went places on a motorcycle that, I mean, people they can't get to these areas except for maybe on this motorcycle.
Yeah, well, this story I'm going to tell you, though, what makes it really, really incredible for me is I had only rode motorcycles probably 5,000 kilometers in all my life.
Wow.
So I had never went on a motorcycle very far until I did this. So the first thing I did is I did an East Coast trip. Sorry, that was 2018. I did the East Coast ride to see if I could do that. It wasn't very far from Ottawa. And then I went, okay, all right, let's find out if I'm still the man I think I am. So I bought this used KLR 650 one-cylinder, and I drove it from here to Tuktoyaktuk on the Arctic Ocean, which is a ride of a long way, and 1,000 kilometers approximately is on dirt roads.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, John, as I started to go across Canada, I was really questioning my balance was still an issue. And so I'm riding that bike, and I get to Dawson City, Yukon, fantastic place. And this is just the headway to the Dempster Highway to the Arctic. And it was horrible. It was horrible. It's beautiful beyond imagination, but I saw everything from snow, sleet, the thickest mud piles. I dragged my feet on that motorcycle. I came around corners and just started bawling my eyes out. because I'm going, okay, like, am I absolutely crazy? And I'm believing that this is the last opportunity I was going to, because I'm getting older, and it was like, I have to do this at this
Yeah.
point in time because I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to, and I need to find out if I'm still the person I am. So I met some tremendous people as I'm going up this 1,000 kilometers. But then every time I'd come around a bend and see this vista of nothing, of just mountains, the Ogilvy Mountains and moose, I just start bawling and bawling and bawling. And then I'd go down this one long stretch at Rock River, and the motorcycle would be beside me, and I'd be dragging my feet. And I couldn't imagine it. And I'm trying to get to this sign that says the Arctic Ocean in Tuktoyaktuk. I'm saying, this is where I have to go. I have to get to that sign. I have to get to that sign.
Okay.
And so I get to that sign, and I met great people, and I'm going to be doing a podcast on that. I met great people, but I'm going to tell you, I got to that sign. It had to be 2 degrees Celsius. It was snowing, and like gale force winds, and the sign didn't mean anything. Yeah, it didn't mean one thing to me.
Why not?
Because the only thing that mattered is I got there.
Okay.
The sign meant nothing. The sign was it's funny. I thought the sign was the end point of why I was doing it. And the sign was to say I did it. And that's when I really knew again that I had the intestinal fortitude, the person I used to be before that tick bite, the belief in myself, just feeling really inside that, okay, while I'm older and I'm still not the person I used to be, I'm still as strong mentally as I always have been. And that ride changed my life. It cleaned up all the negatives I had in my past relationships.
Okay.
It cleaned up the messes that didn't work out from being sick. It allowed me to structure again the belief that I could have another relationship, that I could be a good person. And it's absolutely instrumental, one of the most important defining moments of my existence on this planet. And the fishing show was gigantic, but nothing compared to that 1,000-kilometer ride in the worst possible conditions I could have ever dreamed of. It allows me today to be as confident as ever in my life. I have a great foundation that was tested, and that's why I did it. I tested that foundation that I believed I had. I was convincing myself I had that.
Sure.
And I now needed proof that I had that, because it's one thing to tell yourself you're good. I'm a good person, but it's another thing to be a good person. And that's what that did for me. And the best thing I ever did, next to having daughters, for sure. That's
Nice.
the number one. My kids are fantastic. But we're not talking about what I've given them, because I've given them everything. I'm talking about what I give myself. And I gave myself the permission to say that I made it.
What time of year was it that you hopped on the motorcycle and began your journey?
Late August. Yeah.
Really? So I just, for people, who live in Canada, even in the south of Canada where we live, I don't think we appreciate just how cold it can still get in the north, even that time of year. 'Cause we think, in August, everything's sunny and hot and warm, and it's not. So, you talk about snow and gale force winds. I just want people to understand sort of what time of year it was.
Yeah.
But that alone time on the bike, I mean, you must have been having a lot of conversations in your own mind with yourself, sorting things out probably, right? And making sense of things. It probably gave you an opportunity to get some clarity in your life.
Huge. It did. It 100% did. And I didn't do it for any other reason than to get that clarity. And, the initial clarity is, am I still the man I think I am?
That was your question. That was your question when you hopped on the bike.
That was the question.
That was your why.
That was my why. And
Okay.
I said, if I can get to that sign, oh yeah, I can't wait to touch that sign. But when I tell people, the sign didn't mean anything, they go, oh, I say, well, once you do it, you'll realize the sign doesn't mean. It's
No,
the
I think I get it because it was the visual representation. And
yeah.
by the time you got there, you didn't need the visual representation anymore because there was something else that was worth so much more to you.
I was the sign.
There you go.
I
Beautiful.
was the sign. The
Beautiful.
sign is my sign I carry with me, right? The Great Arctic Ocean sign is there for everybody to go touch. It's just if you have the guts to go do it. And here's the crazy part of that trip. I met people from Belgium on bicycles with
What?
going up this road on bicycles in the worst wind you ever seen in your existence, and then hail, and the guy's riding his bicycle, and he's got Crocs on, and he's got a broken mirror
Come on.
with a clothes hanger hooked up as his rear view mirror. And when I talked to him, he was on the same journey. He was going there for the same reason. He goes, "Oh, I got a lot of problems in my life. I'm trying to find my way." And I'm going, "Okay, well, this is not actually as crazy as I thought it was, I guess."
Did he know about Canadian weather? Like,
It didn't affect. It's funny. The people that I met there, it didn't affect them, John.
wow.
They were there for a mission, and now that I've talked to more people, and I'm going to have a podcast shortly on that ride with some people who run some tourist things up there, and the guy who runs it told me the same thing. It's really crazy what people say to me when I get to that sign. I go, "Oh, what do they say?" And I get that story. Well, they really say that they found themselves. I went, "Oh, how ironic! Someone would think that. That's crazy." And I have to tell you, I camped on the shore of the Arctic Ocean in Tuktoyaktuk, right on that shore. Put my feet in the water, ate muktuk, met so many great people. I met the Senator Anderson, who lives up there, who's in Ottawa as a senator. She heard the story of why. She goes, "Oh, you're not the only person who comes here for this." And I have to tell you, I had put some mentions on I guess on Instagram that I was going to go to Tuktoyaktuk on my motorcycle, and I wrote the hashtag. And when I get there, I go into a like a gift shop, and a lady's sitting there doing some stuff, and she lifts up her sunglasses. She goes, "Oh, we've been waiting for you." I go, what do you mean you're waiting for me?" She goes, "Yeah, we were following you along. You posted a whole bunch of pictures getting here."
Hashtag.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Yeah, the people are great. Like the people of that whole, you can't drive past the Tombstone Mountains or the on the Dempster. You can't drive by there. You have to go there. It's not a pass by destination. You can't cross the mighty Mackenzie without going there. You can't go to Fort McPherson or and there's nothing in between, eh, John? You have to understand, like, you go 350 kilometers, there's nothing. There's no Walmart or there's no Tim Hortons. There is a road
Right.
built through the tundra and grizzly bears and a road, but magnificent beauty. And that, see, it's probably instilled so deep inside me that whenever I talk about it, it just refuels the foundation. It's a crazy, it just recurs and recurs. So it's pretty cool, actually.
That ride obviously took you to a better place.
100%. Absolutely. It's
And
the man I am.
There you go. And the better place you're in now has you just launching Frank Papineau Outside the Box, your very own podcast. So what is this podcast about?
Going to talk everything that has to do with men. So, not that we don't want ladies to watch, because, we're even going to talk about menopause so that men can learn about how to live through that and understand.
Makes a lot of sense to me,
and learn how to understand it. Yeah. The whole idea behind this is Outside the Box is, as you know, John, and you know me quite well, I'm not afraid to say anything.
No.
So this whole
to that. No, you're not.
So it sometimes gets me in trouble, but most of the time saves my life, which is ironic, right? That's the chance you take. So, but yeah, we're going to talk about everything guy related. I just did a podcast just recently with Maurice DeHar to talk about men's nutritional health and so on. It's a great podcast we did, and I've got another one talking about adventure motorcycle travel to the Arctic, where we're gonna show some people some of the footage that I did when I was up there. And we're going to do some stuff on mental health for guys. We're going to talk about relationships, hunting, fishing, anything to do with guys. And we hope women watch too, because it may help them understand us, because we're quirky too, right? So It's good to know our quirks. So I'm excited. Listen, I spent time in television, and then I went away to do a whole bunch of other things, and then I got sick, and here I am back wanting to do this again. This is my love. I love people. I love talking to people, and I love sharing the fact that I made it. And what I mean about made it is I didn't make it in a bank account. That's not the made it I'm talking about. I'm talking about I made it personally. You know, I really like myself.
Well, what's that old expression, right? I'm richer because of the relationships I have. You know, it's not a monetary currency that makes some people feel rich.
Yeah. No,
You know,
no. People can feel rich just by loving themselves.
And I love that you found that for yourself.
Yeah, thanks, John.
And you've got the podcast. So the podcast is video, obviously, because you are a video guy. So that's on YouTube, I would assume.
Yeah, Frank Papineau Outside the Box on YouTube. We have some of my old fishing shows on there. I put a whole bunch of old fishing shows. The company that's doing the podcast, they said, okay, do you have fishing shows and stuff? I go, yeah, I do. They go, okay, we'll put all that up so people can see what you did in the past. And then we have our first podcast that just got put up. We have another one that we're cleaning up right now in the editing department. Okay. And that will be up. And then I'm searching for interesting guests to go along the way. And I will put it on Spotify and so on. We'll take the audio out because
that was my next question. Will there be an audio?
100%. Yeah. We'll take the audio off. I'm pretty cognizant that people visually can't see it so I've made sure that I explain stuff along the way the best I can so the listener can kind of get a visual picture, because if I'm talking, hey, it's this big and there's nothing there,
we're both broadcasters, right? So I'm sure you roll your eyes as well when you're listening to something on the radio that is obviously a TV feed and you're going, if you look closely here, you'll see, and it's like, no, but I'm glad you're doing an audio component as well, you know, for that person who's hopping on a motorcycle and heading north to the
yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of them doing it. So, maybe they'll catch this inspirational thing next time before the next person goes, because more and more people are going. So pretty exciting.
Frank Papineau Outside the Box is the podcast you're looking for. Again, YouTube, and coming soon to Spotify, which will lead to Apple Music, Amazon, etc. Frank, I'm so grateful that I wanted to launch my third season of Bumps in the Road with a conversation with you, because you and I have reconnected, because I know you've been through a lot, and you are, through it all, an amazingly positive person. And I always wrap up this podcast by asking my guest this question. What keeps you positive? And I know you kind of touched on it, but sum it up for us. What keeps you positive? What keeps you going?
Believe in yourself. You look at yourself every day in the mirror. That's who you have to believe in. That's the only person that matters. You have to believe in you. And if you don't believe in you, then start building a foundation right today of things that are positive for you. I equate all my success in life and everything I've ever offered to anybody from all the people who allowed me to have a real solid foundation. That's been my savior, because every time I get knocked down, there's only so far I could ever go. And I always knew that foundation was there to catch me. And if you really love life, you'll just get up again.
I've learned a lot just from our conversations, buddy to buddy, but I've learned a lot here today as well. Frank Papineau, Outside the Box, our first guest on season 3 of Bumps in the Road. Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Good. Hope you're having a great summer, bud.
You too, man.
Cheers.